What I want to cover next is your setup for this course. And by that, I mean the setup on your computer so that you can run the examples that I'll be showing here. And in the book and in this course, I offer two different options. The first one is to install a tool named Scala CLI. And the easiest way for me to demonstrate that is to start it here at the command line. So you type in Scala CLI space REPL, and that starts the Scala REPL. And I call this a playground area or an experimental area because you can come in here and you just type expressions like val a equals 1. And what that does is val creates a new variable. The variable name is a, and its value is 1. And you can see that even though I don't assign a type here, the REPL is smart enough to say, oh, okay, you created something with a number 1, so that's an integer or an int in Scala. Similarly, I could say val name equals Alvin, and I enclose that in double quotes. So again, Scala is smart enough to go, oh, okay, I see this one as a string because you enclosed it in double quotes. And I'll get more into data types as we go along. Right now, I just want to show you what Scala CLI is, and in this particular case, the REPL. You can also use Scala CLI to compile and run scripts and small applications. And I'll show that more as we go along in this course. Scala CLI was created by a company named Virtus Lab, and you can see the URL for it up here in the address area. And an important part of that is you just come to their webpage, you click on installation, and then it shows information on how to install Scala CLI on all these different platforms. And if you want to try advanced forms of installation, you can use these others down here. Another important point to mention is as I'm recording these videos, it's currently in April 2023, and Scala CLI has been approved to become the next Scala command. So you'll see that on this page. In the Scala world, there's something called a SIP, which I believe stands for Scala Improvement Process. So number 46 is, and this has been approved, is that they want to use Scala CLI as the default Scala command. So if I go back to the terminal, and let me hop out of there. So the way I started the REPL here in this example was with Scala CLI space REPL. And the way this should work in the future is the CLI part will go away and it'll just be Scala space REPL. So that's what I mean when I say Scala CLI is going to become the default Scala command. This is going to happen sometime in the future. Installing Scala CLI is the first option that I offer for running all the code that you'll see in this course. The second option is that instead of using the REPL on your computer, you can use an online website named Scasti. And this is what Scasti looks like. So it's kind of like a REPL in your browser. So you can type the same examples that I showed before. If I do val a equals 1 and hit enter, nothing happens. If I try to, if I press run, you'll see some output here. And what happens there is when you press run, your code is sent to a remote server. It's compiled, and then the output of that shows up in this area down here. But because this code doesn't actually have any output, what I find in Scasti is that you need to use print line statements more. And then here you see it was sent to the server, and then it prints 1, which comes from there. So that's a little more obvious if I print something like hello and run, and you see it being sent off, and then it comes back with this result. So Scasti is similar to Scala CLI. The benefit of it is it runs in your browser, so you don't need to install anything on your computer. Scasti has some other features like worksheets, so if you use worksheets with IntelliJ IDEA or VS Code, that Scasti has worksheets as well. The important thing I want to show you is that when you come over here to the build settings, you want to make sure that this is set for Scala 3 for this course, and I believe it defaults to the latest stable version by default. The other things that you see here is some SBT configuration information. So SBT is a build tool for Scala. It was one of the first build tools, and it's still used on many Scala projects. And this is some configuration information. So if you had a build.sbt file on your computer, you would see this information in this. And the key about this is that you can come into the library section and say, oh, I want to work with Zio for a little while. So you might select the main Zio library, and then you say, oh, I want to work with Zio Streams. I want to experiment with Zio Streams. So then you select that as well. And when you select those two, you'll see that they are added to the SPT configuration information here. So then when you go back to the editor, now you can begin using Zio. And I won't use that now, but we will use it in future courses. So that covers the main two options for running Scala code on your computer system in terms of the setup for our course. And as I mentioned here, if you're not sure what you want to do, especially like if you're new to Scala, just go ahead and start with Scasti because you don't have to install anything on your computer. You can run all the examples through Scasti. And when it doesn't work for you anymore, or when we get to running other things at the command line, you will need Scala CLI at that time. Another thing I want to mention as part of the setup for this course is that this book has online exercises, so we can use those in the course as well here if we want to. And you can see the URL up here. And what I mean by this is these are all the different chapters in the book, different lessons in the book. So if we were working with a REPL right now, you could come in here and these are the exercises for the REPL. So it asks, is this code correct? And I would say yes, check my answer, go on to the next exercise. And if you don't want to do the yes or no part, you can just say, show me the answer and go on to the next. And in addition to multiple choice ones like that, it also has fill in the blank exercises like these here. And you can see the number of exercises in each lesson up there. So you can use these exercises at the end of every lesson. As part of our setup, I want to mention a few more things. The first is that Scala 3, a big change with Scala 3, was it got away from using this style of syntax. I call this style, it's kind of like a C style or Java style where we use the parentheses and curly braces. And we use that in Scala 2. And in Scala 3, one of the big changes was it got rid of most parentheses and curly braces. So the new style looks like this. And this is more of a, I call it a significant indentation style. So there's two things to mention. So the first thing to mention is we're going to use this significant indentation style in this course. And the second thing is I tend to indent with 4 spaces. That's not a standard, but I find it's much more readable, especially in books and in places where you don't have an IDE that highlights your code. I also want to note that there's a mistake in this example, so I'm going to go ahead and do that inside the REPL so you get a little more idea of how to use the REPL. So let me start that up again here. And you see, so this is a for loop, so I'm going to say for I in 1 to 10 do 1, 2, 3, 4 print line. What's missing there is the I, so that's a mistake in the book. So when I do this, you'll see that it prints 1 through 10. A next thing to mention is that comments in Scala are just like comments in most languages, by which I mean C-style programming languages, so C, C++, Java, etc. And we have these 3 options. And I won't go into any examples because I think most people have probably seen those before. But if you haven't, these are the 3 styles in this section right here. And then the last thing I want to mention is this is something that you'll see in the GitHub examples, and I do this sometimes during regular code, and then I also do this when I'm trying to demonstrate or debug things. So you can create a block of code and assign that to a variable, as I show here. And when you do this, the way it works is that the result of the block of code is the value of the last line in the block of code. So in this example, that return value is the number 42, and I can demonstrate this in the REPL. So I will say val a equals, what was I doing there? Okay, so val a equals, open the block of code, and I'm going to say, and this can be any code at all, so it can be a comment, and then it could be that print line, hi mom, and then if this is the last line of code, there is that number 42. So what you'll see there is that the print line statement was executed and it shows hi mom, and then 42 is returned as a value of the block of code, and it's assigned to the variable a, and you can see that in the result here where it says val, which is variable, a is an int and its value is 42. So if I were to go back up here and change that and just make that, how about true? Then this is something you can do in the REPL, is to reassign a variable like that. So now the variable a is a Boolean and it's assigned to true. And again, I primarily mention this at this time. This is actually a little bit of an advanced topic, but I want to mention it early here because I do use it in some of the examples on GitHub when I'm trying to demonstrate certain things for you. And I do want to mention, if you click this link here, it will show you the GitHub repository that I'm talking about. So when you dig into these source code examples for this course and for this book, you'll see those blocks of code being used. So as a quick summary, this covered the setup for this course, and again the two options where you can install Scala CLI or you can install Scasti. And then I also mentioned the significant indentation syntax that Scala 3 uses, and that I'll be indenting with 4 characters typically. I noted that there are 3 styles of comments, and I showed them here. And then I showed how blocks of code or code blocks work in Scala.